installment of the Coeus Collective Pond Hackathon interview series. Today is the first interview of our second week here, so we're really grateful that you're here with us. If you're in the eastern coast of the United States, so that means that it's lunchtime, and we're grateful that you're spending your lunch with us. If you're on the west coast, like Chris is, it means that it's mid morning, which is a good time to listen to something. You maybe have had your breakfast already, or if you like your coffee a little bit later, then you're having that now too. But today's going to be a really, really special discussion. Just to recap how we got here, we had our first interviews last week. Those were with Josh Kutros of um, the amazing Pensar, VC-backed cybersecurity AI firm based in New York City. In addition to the iconic global Web3 attorney Charles Salamowitz. So these interview series, we have two Web3 interviews in addition to two AI focused interviews. Today is going to be one of our AI focused interviews. We are now starting to be able to have a wonderful chat with a dear friend of mine and an amazing mind in AI, Nisarg Patel. But before we get started with Nisarg and I's chat, Coeus Collective just wants to let everybody know that we are really grateful for the opportunity that Pond has provided us with to be able to have this series, have these conversations with four amazing leaders in AI and Web3. It's been a wonderful experience to work with you all on the Founder Speedrun Hackathon. Over 800 people are involved, and it's coming to a close now at the second week. And very grateful to our sponsors, Google Cloud, the Ethereum Foundation, and 11 Labs. So, with that said, I'm now going to give it to Chris to begin the interview.
Awesome. Thank you, Antonio. And the feeling is mutual. It's been a pleasure working with you and Leon and the rest of the team. It's been incredible. So I'd just like to give a quick intro on Pond, and then I can hand it off to Nisarg and Antonio to kick off the interview. But again, as Antonio mentioned, we at Pond are kicked off last week the Founder Speedrun Hackathon, where not only do we have great prizes from our sponsors, as Antonio mentioned, Google Cloud, the Ethereum Foundation, and 11 Labs, but this hackathon doesn't just end for hackers at August 4th. It can actually carry on from that, where you can take your idea or your MVP and actually launch it into a startup and into a business. And some of the ways that Pond will help our hackathon winners is through raising funds through a token generation event. We'll also leverage that in order to help develop your product and make it go to market ready. And we'll provide you with additional support, whether it's infrastructure, marketing, or distribution. We're here to help you get set up for success. So the goal of Pond is to make waves, build bold, and launch with Pond. So Antonio, Nisarg, I will leave it to you all. Thank you so much for kicking this off.
Thank you, Chris. The goal of Pond is to make waves. I love that. You oftentimes don't see waves in a pond, but there are little ripples, and that's the effect of moving from ripples to waves. That's a little bit of analogy for being a startup founder. I'll stop there. Let's have Nisarg Patel introduce himself. It's a pleasure to have you here, man.
Hey, Antonio. Excited to be here. Excited to talk to everyone. Answer any questions you all might have. My name is Nisarg. I'm currently a product manager at IBM watsonx.ai. We are a development platform for not only generative AI applications, but also traditional ML. So you can do anything like one, select from a whole number of models that are available, whether it be hosted, engineer prompts, customize the model through various tuning techniques, build any kind of customization through RAG, and ultimately deploy that as a REST endpoint. So managing that full kind of life cycle from discovery to deployment. Um, and of course, all this with more of the enterprise governance, security, access management, so on, that IBM is known for.
Amazing. Well, Nisarg, it's a pleasure to have you here. I guess we've been starting off with this question with everyone who's been on the show so far. We're asking if there's a fond hackathon or just generally hacking memory that you have. It starts setting the tone for just how amazing it is to always be at a hackathon and to talk about some of the memories that we've all had at these.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say for me, a lot of it is coming from things, honestly. So the best part about these kinds of experiences for me is working and meeting with new people and connecting on different ideas. And Antonio and I have worked together on multiple different things in the past. along with things we've done with other folks in school. And the best part for me was meeting new folks and getting their fresh perspectives. Because oftentimes I'm going in and building and thinking about a proof of concept of something, and I won't get that feedback that having someone else working besides you will be able to provide, right? And that kind of that feedback is ultimately so critical to building something useful. Because oftentimes you just get in your own head, right? And start building something that ultimately maybe people don't even need.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that like a hackathon is always like a curated space, right?
Mhm.
So you're always able to meet people, and even when it's like a specific hackathon, let's say a deep tech hackathon or for a specific subject area, cybersecurity, something like that, you're always able to meet people within that space and then be able to work with them, which is super super important. As Nisarg referenced, we've worked on a bunch of things together. We've been co-founders. Some of my earliest entrepreneurial experiences were with Nisarg, so to see Nisarg's work now being deployed at a massive scale with one of the most iconic names in tech, IBM, it's been amazing. So grateful for you to be here today. And yeah, let's start with some questions about your work. If you have any questions for Nisarg for us, definitely put it in the chat on any of the platforms. Just let us know. Our team has been sifting through them, and we will get to them at the end of the discussion. So yeah, I mean, let's start with some tips for hackathons. I mean, if watsonx.ai powers enterprise deployments, right? But there are certainly some prototyping hacks that your experiences at Watson that could apply to people that are working at hackathons. So, what are some user centric prototyping hacks that hackathon teams can use to impress stakeholders in these competitions?
Yeah, totally. So, a couple of things I think that I would think about when trying to build that proof of concept is number two, and it kind of first starts off with having a crystal clear idea of what it is you're trying to build to and what are the goals that you're trying to accomplish. Once you have that, it's trying to figure out what's that initial aha moment that you're trying to get to, right? For us, from Watson X as a development platform, having that wider selection of models is of course critical, right, to building anything kind of resilient, and having that equipping developers with the choice in terms of use cases that they're able to support. But the thing that we want people to get to is that deployment phase, right? So that for us, that is that critical endpoint that we're trying to get to. We're not trying to optimize as much. We are looking at, of course, monthly active users and all the other different kind of metrics, right? But what we really are looking for is like we want people to like build something and deploy it in production. So one is identifying that what's that end goal that you want your customer and user to get to. And the second is right now, I think it's super easy, especially as a product manager right now, for developing kind of a UI view for whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? And you can use various different tools. watsonx as a development platform is not a prototyping tool. It's more from kind of building more of these resilient applications. But there's a lot of other tools that you can use, like Lovable, Replit, right, Cursor even, for prototyping. And so you can use those tools and ultimately get something that may not have everything working, right? But you can use as an initial validation point to say that, oh, okay, this is something that we can actually dive deeper into. People are kind of confused about XYZ feature we're building here, right? Maybe it doesn't do all the functionality that you requested it, right? Maybe it's a simple CRUD database in the back end. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You're just validating with something physical that a customer or user is kind of can react to. Because there might be a lot of requirements customers have that they may not be able to articulate properly on whatever problem they're facing that they now would be able to do because you now have a somewhat of a working prototype that you can develop.
Amazing. So the road to a working prototype involves a lot of different steps. One of them is certainly thinking about your UI. You brought that up, but I think sometimes in a hackathon it's perhaps difficult to understand when exactly you should really begin to focus in on your UI. Right?
Mhm.
Is thinking about UI UX something that you think is prudent to think about from the very beginning, or should you think more about the technical features first?
I mean, at the end of the day, the UI is kind of only going to work when you have proper APIs and SDKs in the back, right? But depends on the kinds of problems you're trying to solve at a hackathon. Let's say you're building a purely developer focused product, and you might kind of be exposing that purely as an API and SDK. Maybe you're building the next Stripe, right? And it's purely exposed as an API. Those are things you may not necessarily be doing at a hackathon. And so I think it's easier from my perspective to get that UI validation and then design, okay, these are the kind of features and kinds of endpoints that we actually might need to expose for getting the right data across to the customer, making sure they have the right action support and so on. And that ultimately will help you build a scaffolding. And then you can go in and fill in the gaps, okay, for building a more resilient system that we might don't just want, for example, the ability to read XYZ data points from a given database. We also want ability to give the user to update them live. And we want them to update it with some sub millisecond latency, for example, right? And those are kind of technical considerations that you would probably think about in your post prototyping phase, not in the hackathon stage.
So when we're thinking about these technical considerations, of course, it's important to think about dashboards for creating them, right? And understanding that part of the role of a PM is to understand that they have to be tracking, all of the health of all of the products that are being created. What are some dashboard metrics you would recommend founders and hackathons or builders and hackathons rather end up thinking about from the very beginning of their hackathon experience, just to make sure that technically everything is on track?
Yeah. Not to give like the kind of consulting answer, right? It really depends. But here's the really core thing that I would really focus on is there's this particular action you want to optimize for. How long does it take the user to go out and do that? For a developer platform, one of the things we are trying to improve on is how long does it take for you to sign up and then ultimately get your API key and make that first API call, right? We want that time to be as short as possible because ultimately that is your first step in getting as part of that value chain. The second thing is there's multiple steps on these value chains. Most products, especially if they're more of a platform, they support a whole host of different functionalities. So you want to find the pathways across whatever it is that your product is doing, right? Even something like, let's say, like DoorDash, right? You have not only delivery of food, but you have grocery delivery, you have pickup, right? All of those are kind of like ultimate things that the customer can do on the platform, and there's various stages there. So you want to determine what the ultimate time is for them to do that. And because right now there's so many products doing similar things. If your product is taking too long to do something that should be relatively trivial, then it's very easy for someone to switch over and try something else because the switching costs are super low. And so those are the things that I would be kind of thinking about from a metrics optimization standpoint. How fast does it take to do something? Then there's, of course, your traditional kind of metrics for retention, active users, and so on, right? But the thing that I really would kind of focus on is time to value here. Um, and that is ultimately the thing that will kind of inform your user experience the most.
And so, do you recommend like a dashboard flow or a feedback loop to ensure that these things are constantly moving? I mean, a broader question that's interesting is like, to what extent should there be a product manager role within a hackathon team,
Mhm.
right? Because like it's very unlikely, I think that I mean there could be a product management hackathon, right? But that
Yeah.
somebody would opt into a hackathon with the explicit role of saying, I am going to be the product manager for this project, right? So, to what extent do you think that product management should be worked into the hackathon process at all? And I know that this answer would be
Yeah.
very different for this Pond hackathon because it's 2 weeks long versus one that was, like the one we did during New York Tech Week, which was just 4 hours to build, or even a traditional one that's just 1 or 2 nights.
Yeah. Um, I mean, my personal philosophy is that all PMs or anyone feel kind of working in kind of, especially for a hackathon, is everyone should be building something. And right, and in a 2 week time span, you have a lot more room to iterate. Consider it a full sprint, right? For whatever feature you're trying to develop. Except in this case, your feature is really some larger tool that you're developing. And so now you have actually room for a PM to come in and think about um, one, understanding what the user needs are, right? And you can spend a lot more time fleshing that out and the exact workflows. I think that's where PM skill set is really useful. The second thing is like, is it it's use if it's useful for a particular set of users, is it useful as a larger market need? Um, and I think that there's different schools of thought here, right? Like, if I want to build a life cycle business, I can really optimize for a small core select group of users, and they are religiously kind of dedicated to this product, and that's really good stable revenue. The other side is I need to build something crazy venture scalable, in which case I need actual broad market adoption. So, and that's where the kind of strategic thinking of product managers and so on kind of becomes helpful. But I wouldn't. But the next thing that I would kind of be thinking about is that there's a lot of thinking here in this beginning part, but ultimately PMs need to now translate that into building and being operating alongside the kind of, I guess, more engineer personas that are working on this particular product. Because then you can think about, all right, what are the iteration loops that we need to test out, right? If I build a scaffolding for this particular, I don't know, dashboard, I can now take that as a PM and develop 4 different iterations for it for doing some quick little testing with small little user group. Maybe I'll just walk around the hackathon floor and I'll have different people typically think PMs are changing colors on buttons, but let's say use that for example, right? We can go and change the kind of colors or where button placement, whatever it is, right? And kind of iterate on off of that. And that 2 week timeline honestly gives you a lot more breathing room to do that.
I certainly subscribe to the Nisarg Patel version of being a product manager, which is not about changing buttons, not about changing
Yeah.
colors, but about building. I love when you said, if you are going to a hackathon, you are there to build, right?
Hmm.
You can potentially be there to support, you can try the best you can, but honestly, I feel like if you're just going there to not, if you're not going there to build, you're maybe wasting people's time a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
you're
You
not
want
there
to
to
be there
build
to
a
build.
strategy deck on this super deep fleshed out, right? You're really trying to get that iterative POC out there. And maybe that helps you inform your overarching strategy, right? But without that kind of end user feedback there really, it honestly would be kind of difficult to progress further.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's the classic adage of wanting to build a product that solves a problem. If you don't have any validation on a problem and you're only building
Mhm.
something within 48 hours, trying to do a whole analysis on, creating your solution is probably not the best thing. You kind of just got to get it out into the world. All
Yeah.
right, cool. We already have some questions from the audience. Definitely keep asking them. Thank you. But I am going to ask one more to you, Nisarg. Let's talk about tools. We love functional content at Coeus Collective. That's something that's really, really important to us, is making sure that we are letting the audience know of the functional tools that they can benefit from. What tools, maybe feel free to even plug, some watsonx extensions.
Yeah.
What tools would you encourage teams to include in their builds this week?
Yeah, 100%. So there's, well, I use Cursor for like personal prototyping and everything, Replit and Lovable, depending on whether or not I need a functioning UI, right? But there's one tool, I'll try to find the name of it after. It provides really fleshed out components that you can design components, what I mean specifically, for really nice and aesthetic designs. That would be super useful. Second item that I would kind of recommend is instrumentation oriented. And as a PM, I would say that's super critical in terms of getting feedback. So we personally use Amplitude a lot, and it's super helpful. I would say that's probably geared more to on the enterprise side. If there's a free plan, highly recommend figuring out that and Segment in terms of getting the usage metrics. There might be other ways to even get usage metrics for whatever it is you're using. Second thing is visibility into kind of, I assume a lot of folks in the crowd are building some kind of AI tools. Um, for resiliency, you probably want a kind of abstraction layer across whatever models, usage, etc. you're using. And those are things to think about as you scale your solution further. So I would incorporate some kind of gateway or abstraction service. So you don't need to one, switch around different SDKs that you're using, or you're not totally reliant on OpenAI, watsonx, or some other provider, right? And that's super critical as you scale your product out further. All products have access to multiple model providers. It's really cumbersome to switch models around. And so I would kind of use some abstraction service, whether it be, we have a gateway as well on watsonx, but you can use any other item, open router, and so on, to kind of make sure that your solution is resilient.
Amazing. Resiliency is so, so, so important, especially in the context of wanting to build something that lasts longer than the hackathon itself.
Mhm.
I have an interesting question here from jml.ny. What is a simple but powerful way to make our product positioned as enterprise grade even at the MVP stage? And I'll follow that up with another question, Nisarg. Should people in hackathons even be thinking about positioning as enterprise grade at this early stage?
Okay, let me answer your question after, but a simple way to actually think about enterprise grade readiness is an enterprise is usually quite a large org. They have a lot of rules and considerations for who can do what, right? And I think to think about is, especially from a backend instrumentation point of view, is and there's a lot of like out of the box solutions you can incorporate to make it easier on yourself. Is um, really implementing access management, right? Um, you don't need to get into auth, SSO, and all that other stuff, right? But really, like if you have a group signing up, how do you delegate the group's permissions, right? And that is a super clean way of kind of making it progress along the enterprise chain readiness. Now, to be actually enterprise ready, there's a whole lot of other stuff in terms of the SLAs you have to hit, right, and things like that. Some of which you can do by some of the other recommendations I made in terms of using a gateway, right, in terms of making sure you have high uptime availability, things like that. Second thing on making enterprise ready is this you wouldn't really do in the hackathon phase, honestly. It's most companies, for them, being enterprise ready means you're providing custom SLAs as well as kind of a service, whether it be opening up a Discord or something else, right? What an enterprise needs is someone who they can reliably rely on to provide support in case something goes wrong. And something will go wrong because these systems are being stress tested to the max when they're deployed in the scale of thousands. Um, as to whether or not you should even think about enterprise readiness, I would say you should think about it being enterprise ready from the perspective of, am I building at every single juncture a decision that I'm making? Am I building something that I would have to significantly rework? And is it the easiest choice for me to make that simple switch, right? Into making it a kind of, it's a kind of like if you have a USB, like all these different devices, they've switched to USB-C, right? It provides a simple abstraction layer. So if switching to some kind of abstraction layer that makes your system more resilient is an easy choice, I would say do it because it'll make the work later on much easier as you rework it. But at the end of the day, at a hackathon, you have limited amount of time. The only thing you prioritize is like getting something out there, um, making something resilient, and ultimately, a lot of companies actually end up um, redoing their entire code base multiple times, like within a year, right? The entirety of their code base as a startup. So I honestly wouldn't worry about it too much, but if you have to, just make the easy decision on reusable components wherever you are able to.
Nisarg, I mean, you've used the word resiliency a lot, and I have to ask, maybe this is even a question that's more about like hacker culture rather than like a technical question, but do you do we really think that resiliency is the most important thing that people can focus on during a hackathon, right? Because perhaps there should be some elements of hacker culture that's just like, hell yeah, I'm going to come together and I'm going to
Yeah.
build something that's only going to be relevant for these 2 days, but it's going to make me learn something new, or I'm going to meet new people doing it. Do we always have to be thinking about resiliency? Maybe this is just like a general cultural commentary question, but I'm
Totally.
interested in your perspective.
Until you validated your user need, I don't think you should focus on resiliency at all. Right? Once you have a definitive user need that you validated and that you know that your product or your idea can address it, um, without that, do not think about resiliency because at that point you haven't even hit that scale yet. And to me, the whole thing that you have to do right now is kind of work towards that validation. So until you receive that validation, like positive to be thinking about. But it will honestly consume a lot of um, cycles, I'll say, in terms of getting something ready faster. The second thing is a lot of people are actually building B2B SaaS applications, right? And for that, I would say that's a specific industry in which I would say you are thinking about resiliency from the start. And that is something that you definitely should be thinking about. So whether if you're building something that's kind of super, if you're um, If your solution is addressing banks, if your solution is addressing governments, if your solution is addressing utilities, that's something that you probably want to have top of mind. You may not get to in your 2 day or 2 week hackathon, um, but it really will creep up very fast because that'll be one of the first checkboxes that is going to be required to make sure that it's ready for use for those kinds of applications.
Amazing, amazing. Very interesting to start. Thank you. Let's move on to another question now from Duval, who's asking which tools should be incorporated in our submission. If you are looking to win, what variables are best to developing value in the eyes of the judges? Is it domain specific founders with matching products, for example?
Yeah.
To be clear, Nisarg is not a judge of this
Yeah.
competition, and maybe is not the best one to showcase the different tools. I think we do know that there are 3 different tracks here, and there are prizes for utilizing those tracks with regard to Google Cloud, the Ethereum Foundation, and 11 Labs. But Nisarg, I did send over actually to you the list of the prizes and how that relates. So maybe we can think about noting that those are the 3 tracks here. What are some of the tools that you think could benefit people who are building within those tracks?
Yeah,
Google
100%.
Cloud, the Ethereum Foundation, and 11 Labs.
Yeah. Voice, I think, is critical, right? When I think about a lot of applications in chat mode, for example, I really hate prompt engineering, right? It is so difficult, and I don't want to, as a user, I think maybe Arvind Srinivas put it like, it's not the user's problem that they're not providing the right context, right? Typing all of that context out is super difficult, and that's where voice kinds of solves a lot of pain points. An example of this, if I'm building a kind of workout app, right? A lot of the workouts app, you're kind of inputting in your sets you're doing, right? But what if I could just record my workout in its entirety? I just put it to the side. A lot of people are recording their workouts anyways, right? Um, uh, so that's kind of the video side. But then, or I can also just like literally tell the entire workout. Like I did 10 sets of 3 of bench press, so on, right? And I think that's kind of as a modality, super easy and something easy to plug in. And the way 11 Labs does it would be super easy for kind of people who are hacking away to actually implement that into their solution as a something that abstracts away kind of difficulties from getting started on in building something.
Awesome. So, Nisarg, I think this is going to be the last question, and I like this one because it blends some of my earlier questions with some of the more recent things we've been speaking about. This one's from KZoo99. What's a low effort or sped up way? Of course, we're speeding things up in this hackathon. It is called the Founder Speedrun Hackathon for a reason to set up a user feedback loop, for example, click tracking or prompt ratings, that you do think can scale later.
Yeah. So I guess this is a bit difficult. It was the question was about feedback for click-throughs or prompt tracking or
That was just examples of feedback loops. He's just asking about user setting up user feedback loops in a sped up way generally.
got it. To my knowledge, I think there's a bunch of different. Maybe I'll focus on the prompt side as well as an example. Um, I would make sure that you're just capturing logs of whatever it is the user is doing in this kind of proof of concept here, right? Um, and every time they're typing in a prompt for whatever it is, make sure you include thumbs up or thumbs down iteration. That is super easy to just put into a database and then do some analysis later and optimize whether or not your response that you're giving as an application is aligned with what the user is expecting, right? There's probably other stuff you can go out and do and implement better telemetry across all of this, but that's a quick and dirty way of getting that feedback immediately. So wherever you
Awesome.
can implement your feedback button in and make it easy to submit it as well.
Ease of access, internal and external, always so important. Nisarg, well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. There was a ton of concrete advice in this conversation, a ton of advice that builders can take with them. There's still a few days left in the Founder Speedrun Hackathon, so we're really grateful for your time here today. Where can people follow you, learn more about what you're working on? Nisarg, I know you've done a couple podcasts for IBM as well, so feel free to plug those too.
Yeah. If you want to learn more about what we're doing, definitely feel free to follow me on LinkedIn or any members of the watsonx team. All great people posting about cool things we're doing. You can also visit the go on ibm.com /watsonx and follow kind of updates on our blog and technical announcements.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Nisarg. Really appreciate it. So we have one more interview, lunchtime interview, Eastern time lunchtime interview for this Founder Speedrun Hackathon. That's going to be on Thursday, featuring Billy Wong, founder and CEO of Insomnia Labs. That will be a more Web3 focused discussion. He's done amazing things in the world of NFTs. In addition, some new components around credit lines as well. So we're really excited to be able to speak with Billy on Thursday. That'll be more Web3 focused. Today was more AI focused. We're really grateful to the support of the Pond team, in addition to our sponsors, Google Cloud, the Ethereum Foundation, and 11 Labs. Thank you so much, Nisarg, for being here today. And as Nisarg said, hackathons are meant for builders. It's time to
Yep.
build. It's always time to build. Let's keep it going. We're in the home stretch. And let us know if you ever have any questions for us or Nisarg. We will see you on Thursday.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Nisarg. Bye.
Thank you.